entertainment, the entertainment in a culture is critically important to deciding the direction of the culture. It's part of the reason I'm such a big fan of our next guest. His name is David Ng. He is the Breitbart Hollywood and technology guy. David, major Hollywood studios push gun control initiative funded by Mike Bloomberg. Now, I think I know the answer, but how is Bloomberg and Hollywood connected? What happened here?
Right. So this weekend, an organization that Mike Bloomberg funds called Everytown pushed this kind of initiative where everyone would wear orange. And it was an initiative that was picked up not only by Hollywood celebrities, but also by major studios. And we're talking about the really big ones like Warner Media, Bad Robot, which is run by J.J. Abrams. It produced Alias and Lost and Mission Impossible movies. And a lot of TV stations as well, a lot of them owned by Viacom CBS. So you have the major players pushing this gun control initiative, but they don't say, of course, that it's funded by Bloomberg. They're just kind of pushing it out there, saying that, we need to end gun violence, we need to end, mass shootings. But they're not being forthright with the public. They're telling the public that this is a kind of a grassroots effort when, in fact, it is being funded by Mike Bloomberg, who has an agenda. And his agenda is for Joe Biden to act via executive order to basically enact gun restrictions, to basically infringe on people's Second Amendment rights. So that is kind of like the end game, but it's being masked by this kind of feel-good public promotion that people are pushing. People are pushing on their kids. People are pushing in schools. And Hollywood's effort is really, really kind of like the beachhead in this, in terms of its kind of getting it out there in the culture in a really major way.
David, all right, I have to ask, because I think these details are important. What did the Hollywood studios see his effort and simply say, I like that because I'm a crazy communist and I love gun control? Did Bloomberg pay them to do it? Does Bloomberg partially own these studios? I'm just trying to understand how the spider web works.
That's a very good question. And I think what we can safely say is that a lot of these efforts kind of come through this kind of nexus in Hollywood that is a nexus between the talent agencies and the publicity firms that all act kind of in concert. A lot of the most powerful talent agencies in Hollywood have major connections to Democrats, to people like Mike Bloomberg, who are very powerful and who have powerful connections into the industry. And these talent agencies kind of put out their message to their clients, to their compatriots in the studios. And that's how it works. It's not something that is official in any way, but it kind of works through association. That's kind of like the way Hollywood and government and Washington kind of work hand in hand. And when I say government, of course, I mean the Democrats, because they're really, really, really plugged into Hollywood. So that's how it works. You have someone powerful like Mike Bloomberg kind of leaning on powerful people like the talent agencies, like the publicity firms, who really pull the strings in Hollywood. And that's how they get political messages disseminated into the public like that.
David, how does it work as far as who leads this? Now, maybe you disagree with me, but I'm of the belief that you take a group of 100 people, you'll have one or two leaders in there. So is that the case in Hollywood? Is it the head of one of the production studios? Is it an actor like Leonardo DiCaprio? Everybody remembers he was all over HR1, as if that idiot even knows anything about HR1, but he was all over it. And then once he pushed it, a bunch of people started pushing it. Is it an actor who leads it? Are there 4 or 5 guys who David Ng could name who are really leading the charge with all this leftist garbage?
Yeah, I think in terms of a lot of the kind of political messaging that's coming out of Hollywood, you have very powerful people at the head of 2 talent agencies specifically, and they are UTA and CAA. And they kind of pull a lot of the political strings. A lot of these talent agencies have political divisions whose sole job is for political messaging and for serving the needs of political clients. And so the political arms of these agencies kind of work together with the celebrities, with the studio heads, to push these messages. Now, there are some studio executives who are kind of like their own man. So like J.J. Abrams, for example. He is someone who is very progressive. He runs his own studio, so he really, really only answers to himself. So in cases like that, I think it's really a kind of personal mission for him. But I think in the case of a lot of celebrities, it's the talent agencies who are really pushing on them to kind of get this message out. And the message of gun control is, of course, a very popular one in Hollywood, and something that, of course, is very hypocritical of them as well, because so many of these talent agencies, so many of these studios make a lot of money off of violent movies, off of movies with guns in them. So it's something that is very hypocritical on their part, but it's very beneficial to them as well, because for the celebrity, it's good PR, and that's what they're looking for. To get in with the people who pull the strings in Hollywood, but also with the public, and especially young people who are very susceptible to this kind of messaging.
That's what I was going to ask you. So all this else aside, I mean, let's say J.J. Abrams has a Soviet flag hanging in his living room, which he very well may. I don't know. But setting that aside, it all comes down to money at some point, right? I mean, even J.J. Abrams has a profit loss sheet. And if the money isn't there, then he's not going to be J.J. Abrams very much longer. Has Hollywood seen its bottom line hurt by going left? Because if they haven't, all this is for naught anyway.
It's a good question. I think they're starting to, because I think people are starting to push back on a lot of this really aggressive messaging. And I think the shift to streaming media, where people aren't really going to the movies as much as they used to, is really also hurting them as well. So I think, yes, the answer to your question is yes. I think it is hurting them. But I think in the long term, it's something that they are going to fight tooth and nail against, because they see their future not here in the United States so much, but overseas. Most blockbuster movies make most of their money overseas, specifically China. So I think they're less concerned about offending conservatives, offending people to the right of center. That they really don't care about them anymore. I think they've set their sights overseas on audiences in other countries as the source of their future revenue.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up China, because I wanted to ask that. And again, I'm going to ask a general question you can't possibly answer, but whatever, I'm going to try anyway. Okay, let's say there is a blockbuster, a new Avengers movie, whatever. There's a blockbuster out that's going to make a fortune. Everyone knows it's going to make a fortune. What are the percentages as far as money they make in America versus Europe versus China? Are they making 90% of their money in China? What are the percentages?
That's a very, very good question, and it's very complex, but I'll boil it down for you. So for a movie like The Avengers, or for a Fast and Furious movie, for example, I would say, generally speaking, these kinds of movies make slightly more money in China than they do in the United States. So that might break down to about 30% of their total worldwide revenue might come from China versus 25% in the United States. Now, that's a very complex question, because China withholds a lot of money from the studios. So what they are getting at the box office in China may not be what they get at the end of the day. So China plays really fast and loose with the rules, and they withhold a lot more money than what is being reported in the media. But what Hollywood thinks is that its future is in China, when the reality is much more complicated than that. The fact is that right now, as we're speaking, Hollywood needs China more than China needs Hollywood. If you look at the top 10 grossing movies in China right now, 8 out of 10 of them are domestic. These are homegrown movies, homegrown blockbusters. They tend to be, sci-fi movies, or they tend to be kind of like propagandistic, military, historical movies. These are the movies that are really grossing a lot of money in China, not the Avengers, not, the Transformer movies. So China has really, really, I think, weaned itself off of Hollywood, and it's Hollywood that needs China more at this moment. It's kind of like being in an abusive relationship, you could say.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me. Thanks.